Life can feel overwhelming, and the road to success often seems blocked by setbacks and pain. Yet these challenges can be the very keys to building strength, resilience, and finding true fulfillment. In this video, we'll explore 14 Stoic principles, timeless strategies that have guided people through their darkest days and can help you turn life's struggles into opportunities for growth. Most of us see obstacles as things that block our way, problems that need to be removed or avoided. But here's the truth. These obstacles aren't in your way, they are the way. The Stoics believed that every challenge is an opportunity in disguise, a chance to grow stronger, to build resilience, and to become someone you never thought you could be. Think about a difficult situation you're facing right now. Maybe it's a relationship falling apart, a job that feels like it's draining you, or even a battle with self-doubt. These aren't roadblocks, they are stepping stones. Each struggle you encounter is shaping you, and every challenge is testing your ability to respond, not react. To put this into practice, start by shifting your mindset. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this?" The moment you reframe your challenges, you reclaim your power. Take another example. Imagine an athlete training for a marathon. The physical pain, the exhaustion, these are obstacles, but they're also the means through which the body and mind become stronger. The runner doesn't avoid the discomfort, they seek it, knowing it's the only way to reach the finish line. Your challenges are the same, necessary training ground for who you're meant to become. It's human nature to want to control everything around us, our work, our relationships, even the future. We try to shape the world to fit our expectations, hoping that by controlling every detail, we can create a life free of pain and uncertainty. But the more we cling to control, the more we end up feeling powerless. The Stoics taught that freedom comes from recognizing what is beyond our influence and focusing instead on what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, and our responses. Epictetus once said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This is more than a call to accept the things we cannot change. It's an invitation to find peace and power in the present moment. Consider Amelia Earhart, the pioneering aviator who faced numerous challenges and setbacks in her career, including sexism and technical failures. Despite these obstacles, she focused solely on what she could control: her skills, her preparation, and her courage. Earhart accepted the unpredictability of flight and the possibility of failure, but she chose to act regardless, demonstrating the power of letting go and concentrating on her own abilities. To put this into action, start by identifying the areas in your life where you feel the most stress. Is it something you can control? If it's not, practice letting it go. Imagine holding onto a rope that's pulling you into a storm. The harder you grip, the more you're dragged in. But if you let go, you find relief. This simple visualization can help you release the things you're clinging to that are beyond your reach. Also, create a daily practice. Each morning, write down 3 things you know you cannot control and 3 things you can. Then, set an intention to focus your efforts on what's within your sphere of influence. Over time, this practice not only frees you from the anxiety of trying to manage the uncontrollable, but also empowers you to act effectively in the areas where you can make a difference. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions we face. It can paralyze us, keeping us stuck in the same place, unable to move forward. Yet the Stoics saw fear not as a sign of weakness, but as a signal, a call to face what we are most afraid of and grow stronger because of it. Musonius Rufus, a lesser-known Stoic teacher, once said, "Refrain from seeking fearlessness. Instead, seek to be fearless in the face of fear itself." This isn't about eliminating fear. It's about confronting it and finding strength within those moments of discomfort. Think about the fears you face today, whether it's fear of failure, fear of judgment, or fear of the unknown. Often, these fears keep us from taking risks, speaking up, or pursuing our dreams. But imagine viewing fear as an ally, a guide pointing you toward the areas where growth is possible. The Stoics believed that if you fear something, it's precisely what you should confront. Take the example of Helen Keller, who faced immense obstacles as a person who was blind and deaf. Instead of succumbing to fear or despair, she challenged herself continuously, learning to read, write, and speak despite her limitations. Keller's life illustrates the Stoic principle of confronting fear and transforming it into a source of strength and growth. To practice this, identify a fear you've been avoiding. Visualize yourself facing it, not with the intention of eliminating it, but of learning to stand firm in its presence. Break the fear down into smaller steps. If you're afraid of public speaking, start by sharing your thoughts in a small group. Each time you confront a fear, you diminish its power over you, and in its place, you build confidence. Remember, it's not about becoming fearless, it's about becoming stronger in the presence of fear. Each time you step toward what you're afraid of, you reclaim a piece of your freedom. Most people avoid thinking about the worst that could happen. It's natural. We're wired to seek comfort and avoid what frightens us. But the Stoics saw value in doing the opposite. They believed that by visualizing the things we fear, loss, failure, pain, we could prepare ourselves mentally and strengthen our resilience. Seneca once advised, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" This practice isn't about dwelling on negativity. It's about mentally rehearsing adversity so that when challenges come, you're not caught off guard. Consider the story of Malala Yousafzai, who faced unimaginable adversity when she was attacked for advocating girls' education. Malala did not let fear control her. Instead, she prepared herself mentally for the possibility of such an event. This preparedness helped her remain strong in the aftermath, using the adversity as a platform to further her advocacy. Her story is a testament to the power of visualizing and mentally preparing for life's challenges. To integrate this practice, start small. Imagine losing your phone for a day. How would you adapt? How would you cope? Gradually increase the stakes, visualizing more significant setbacks. For each scenario, ask yourself, what resources do I have to handle this? And how can this experience make me stronger? By rehearsing these scenarios, you build a mental toughness that prepares you for the unexpected. When the worst happens, you've already faced it in your mind, and instead of panic, you respond with clarity and strength. This isn't about pessimism. It's about realistic preparation, combined with a profound appreciation for the present. In a world full of distractions and quick fixes, maintaining self-discipline is one of the hardest challenges we face. The Stoics understood that real freedom isn't about doing whatever you want whenever you want. It's about having the strength to choose what's right, even when it's difficult. Arrian, a disciple of Epictetus, wrote, "It is not the things themselves that disturb people, but their judgments about these things." This highlights the importance of our perspective when it comes to discipline. It's not the challenges themselves that make us struggle, it's how we perceive and react to them. If we see them as opportunities to grow, we begin to build a will that cannot be shaken. Take the example of Harriet Tubman, who, despite the dangers and risks, led enslaved people to freedom through the Underground Railroad. Tubman's unbreakable will wasn't forged overnight. It was built through her commitment to her cause, her relentless courage, and her willingness to endure hardship. She didn't seek comfort. She chose what was right, even when it was dangerous. Tubman's story shows that the greatest strength comes from enduring difficulties for a higher purpose. To start building your own unbreakable will, focus on small daily commitments. Choose one simple action. Maybe it's waking up earlier, practicing gratitude, or sticking to a daily workout. Commit to it, no matter how you feel. Each time you follow through, you strengthen the muscle of discipline. Over time, these small victories create momentum, enabling you to face even greater challenges with confidence. Another effective method is to seek out discomfort deliberately. Cold showers, physical exercise, or fasting are examples of small but powerful practices that train your mind and body to endure discomfort. The more you expose yourself to controlled discomfort, the more resilient you become when unexpected hardships arise. By choosing discipline over ease, you develop the kind of inner strength that remains unshaken, no matter the storm. Everything changes. We spend so much of our lives trying to hold on to things, our achievements, our relationships, even our youth, only to realize that everything eventually slips away. The Stoics understood this truth and saw it not as something to fear, but as a source of power. Heraclitus, often associated with Stoic thought, said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." This reminds us that change is constant, and instead of resisting it, we can find strength by embracing it. Think of Maya Angelou, a poet and civil rights activist who faced numerous challenges throughout her life. From her early struggles with trauma and discrimination, Angelou understood that life's changes, no matter how difficult, could be transformed into sources of strength. She embraced each stage of her life, using her experiences as a foundation for her powerful storytelling and activism. Angelou's acceptance of life's impermanence helped her create meaningful connections with people across generations. To put this principle into practice, reflect on a part of your life that you find yourself holding on to. Is it a past relationship, a previous success, or even a particular role you once played? Accept that its time has passed and appreciate it for what it was. Practice the last time meditation. As you go about your day, ask yourself, what if this were the last time I did this? The last time you spoke to a loved one, the last time you saw the sunset. Feel the poignancy and appreciation it brings. By accepting impermanence, you learn to cherish each moment fully, seeing its beauty rather than fearing its loss. This perspective frees you from the need for permanence, allowing you to live with a lightness and clarity that brings peace. In today's world, it's easy to get lost in worries about the future or regrets from the past. We often go through the motions, missing the moments that matter most. The Stoics taught that true power lies in being fully present, in experiencing each moment without letting our minds drift away. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on this idea, wrote, "Confine yourself to the present. It's a reminder that life is happening right now, and our ability to engage with it can determine the quality of our days. It's not about ignoring the past or avoiding the future, but about grounding ourselves in the only time we truly have control over, this very moment." Consider the story of astronaut Chris Hadfield, who trained rigorously for years before finally going to space. The years of preparation required him to focus intensely on the present moment, breaking down his training into manageable parts and staying aware of each task. By practicing mindful presence, he developed the ability to perform under immense pressure, ultimately becoming one of the most accomplished astronauts. His experience demonstrates how being fully engaged in the present moment can lead to extraordinary achievements. To practice mindful presence, choose a few simple actions you do every day, like drinking a glass of water or stepping outside. Use these as reminders to pull yourself into the present. Feel the weight of the glass in your hand. Notice the cool air as it touches your skin. By anchoring yourself in these small moments, you strengthen your ability to live fully, no matter what life throws your way. You might also try the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. Identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This practice not only grounds you, but also trains your mind to stay connected with your surroundings, enhancing your awareness and your appreciation for the present. For the Stoics, wisdom wasn't a destination, but a continuous journey. They believed that the moment you think you've learned everything, you've stopped growing. Wisdom isn't just about knowledge, it's about deepening your understanding of yourself and the world day by day. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher often overshadowed by others, said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This reminds us that true growth begins when we accept that we don't have all the answers. It's in the openness to learn from every experience, good or bad, that we cultivate wisdom. Consider Benjamin Franklin, who created a personal system to pursue lifelong wisdom. Franklin committed himself to mastering 13 virtues, including humility, frugality, and sincerity, and would review them each day to reflect on his progress. He believed in the power of continual learning, challenging himself to improve, not just in skill, but in character. Franklin's commitment shows that wisdom is about self-reflection and incremental growth. To live this out, commit to one small act of learning each day. Read a page from a book, ask someone for their perspective, or reflect on a mistake you've made and what it taught you. Wisdom isn't about accumulating facts. It's about evolving with each lesson, allowing each new insight to shape the person you're becoming. Another powerful practice is to keep a wisdom journal. At the end of each day, write down one thing you learned or a moment that challenged you. Reflect on how you responded and what you could take away from it. Over time, these reflections build a blueprint for personal growth, ensuring that you never stop learning and evolving. It's easy to blame circumstances or other people when things don't go our way. We tell ourselves that life would be different if only we had better opportunities or more supportive surroundings. But the Stoics believed that true strength comes from owning every action, every choice, regardless of the outcome. Cato the Younger, a Stoic known for his unwavering integrity, said, "I begin to speak only when I'm certain what I'll say isn't better left unsaid." This highlights the Stoic emphasis on responsibility, being thoughtful and deliberate in our actions, and fully accepting their consequences. It's not about controlling everything, but about taking full ownership of how we respond and what we decide. Think of Florence Nightingale, the founder of modern nursing. During the Crimean War, Nightingale faced overwhelming odds and harsh conditions. Rather than blaming the circumstances or waiting for others to act, she took full responsibility for improving the situation, transforming the field hospital's conditions and saving countless lives. Her determination and ownership of her actions, despite adversity, created a lasting legacy in healthcare and demonstrated the power of taking responsibility. To put this into practice, start by eliminating the phrase, "I had no choice." Replace it with, "I chose to." When you see your actions as choices, you reclaim your power. Instead of feeling like a victim of your circumstances, you begin to see yourself as the architect of your life. To deepen this practice, keep track of decisions you make each day, especially the tough ones. Reflect on why you made each choice and how it aligned with your values. When you see each action as a choice, you begin to take full responsibility for your life, gaining a sense of confidence that external circumstances cannot shake. In a world that constantly pushes us to want more, it's easy to overlook the things we already have. We become so focused on what's missing that we forget to appreciate what's present. The Stoics saw gratitude as a powerful way to ground ourselves, to find contentment and strength even when life feels uncertain. Hierocles, a lesser-known Stoic philosopher, advised, "We should give thanks not only for the things we receive, but for the opportunity to use them well." This speaks to the idea that gratitude isn't just about acknowledging what we have, it's about recognizing the privilege to use those things to grow and improve ourselves. Consider the life of Katherine Johnson, the mathematician who played a critical role in NASA's early space missions. Despite facing discrimination and segregation, Johnson remained grateful for the opportunity to do the work she loved and to contribute to something greater than herself. Her appreciation for the chance to use her talents helped her overcome obstacles and make groundbreaking achievements that changed the course of space exploration. To practice deep gratitude, start with small moments. When you wake up, take a moment to appreciate the bed you slept in, the breath you're taking, or the chance to face a new day. The goal is to train your mind to see the value in the ordinary, to find richness even in the simplest parts of life. You can also create a gratitude jar where you write down one thing you're grateful for each day. When you're feeling overwhelmed or discouraged, read through those notes as a reminder of the positive aspects in your life. This practice helps shift your focus from what's missing to the abundance that already exists around you. Modern life often tells us that fulfillment comes from focusing on ourselves, our goals, our happiness, our success. But the Stoics knew a deeper truth. The most meaningful lives are those lived for something greater than ourselves. True fulfillment comes from connecting our actions to a larger purpose, Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, taught, "The goal of life is to live in agreement with nature." By nature, he didn't just mean the environment, but our human nature, the need to connect, to serve, and to contribute beyond our own desires. When we align ourselves with a purpose that extends beyond us, we tap into a sense of meaning that's unshakable, no matter what life throws our way. Think of Jane Goodall, who dedicated her life to understanding and protecting primates. Her work wasn't driven by personal gain, but by a deep sense of responsibility to preserve and protect nature. Goodall's commitment to something greater than herself created a legacy that has inspired millions and continues to have a lasting impact on the world. To start finding your own greater purpose, look at the ways you can serve others, whether it's supporting a loved one, contributing to your community, or using your skills to create something that helps people. Purpose doesn't have to be grand, it just needs to be genuine. When you make your actions about more than just yourself, you discover a sense of fulfillment that no material success can match. Consider volunteering or dedicating time each week to a cause you care about. When you take action beyond your own needs, you'll find a depth of meaning and fulfillment that enriches your entire life. It's natural to avoid thinking about death. Most of us do. The thought of our own mortality can be unsettling, even frightening. But the Stoics believed that accepting our mortality was not a morbid practice, but a way to live more fully. They called it memento mori, a reminder that our time is limited, and that understanding this can bring clarity and purpose to our lives. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." It's a powerful call to action, urging us to make the most of every moment. When we embrace the reality that life is temporary, we begin to focus on what truly matters, spending time with loved ones, pursuing meaningful work, and living with intention. Consider the life of Steve Gleason, a former NFL player diagnosed with ALS. Faced with a life-limiting disease, Gleason chose not to succumb to despair. Instead, he used his remaining time to advocate for ALS patients, raising awareness and inspiring others to live fully despite the challenges. His story is a testament to how embracing mortality can lead to a life filled with purpose and impact. To practice memento mori, start your day by acknowledging that it could be your last. Ask yourself, if this were my final day, how would I want to live it? By confronting this reality, you'll find that the trivial concerns fade away, and you're left with a sense of urgency and appreciation for the present. Reflecting on mortality doesn't have to be somber. It can be a powerful motivator to live fully, love deeply, and pursue what truly matters. Each moment becomes an opportunity to align your actions with your values, knowing that the time to make a difference is now. While the Stoics taught the importance of accepting life as it comes, they went a step further with the practice of amor fati, or love of fate. This concept isn't just about accepting what happens, it's about embracing every event, every challenge, as something necessary for your growth and personal evolution. It's a mindset that turns obstacles into allies and hardships into opportunities. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." This illustrates the idea of amor fati, using everything life gives you, no matter how difficult, as fuel for your own progress. It's about cultivating a mindset where nothing that happens is seen as inherently bad, but as a chance to become stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Consider the story of Bethany Hamilton, the professional surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack. Instead of giving up on her passion, Hamilton embraced her fate. She used the experience as motivation, eventually returning to surfing and becoming a champion. Her journey exemplifies amor fati, turning what could have been seen as a devastating setback into a powerful narrative of resilience and triumph. To practice amor fati, start by looking at something in your life that you've struggled to accept. Instead of wishing it were different, ask yourself how it could be shaping you for the better. What lessons can it teach you, and how might it strengthen you? This shift in perspective allows you to see life as a collaborator in your journey rather than an adversary. When you cultivate amor fati, you transform your mindset from resistance to acceptance, and eventually to love. This practice not only helps you cope with difficulties, but allows you to find joy and growth in every experience, making your life's path a meaningful one. At the foundation of Stoic philosophy are 4 core virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. These aren't just abstract ideals. They are guiding principles that shape how we navigate life's challenges and interact with the world around us. Let's explore each virtue in depth through powerful stories that bring these principles to life. Wisdom in Stoicism is about making decisions that align with what truly matters. It's the pursuit of understanding, not just for the sake of knowledge, but to apply it meaningfully in life. Think of Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher who is known for his method of questioning to seek the truth. Socrates believed that true wisdom was recognizing one's own ignorance and continuously seeking understanding. Even when faced with death, he chose to accept his fate rather than abandon his principles. He taught that wisdom is not about having all the answers, but about constantly striving for truth and living by what we know to be right, regardless of the consequences. Justice for the Stoics extends beyond fairness in the legal sense. It's about doing what is right, regardless of personal gain or recognition. Think of Irina Sendler, the Polish nurse and social worker who during World War II smuggled over 2,500 Jewish children out of the Warsaw Ghetto, risking her life daily. She forged documents and found safe homes for these children, all while facing the threat of execution if caught. Despite the immense danger, her sense of justice and commitment to saving lives never wavered. She later said she wasn't a hero, she was simply doing what needed to be done. Sendler's story shows that true justice is about standing up for what is right, even when no one is watching. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the resolve to act despite it. The Stoics valued courage as the strength to pursue what is right, regardless of the consequences. Consider Aung San Suu Kyi, the Burmese political leader who was placed under house arrest for over 15 years due to her pro-democracy activism. She knew that standing up for her country's freedom would put her life at risk, yet she continued her efforts peacefully, advocating for justice and democratic values. Her courage was not about bravado, but about enduring suffering and personal loss to uphold her principles, showing that true courage is steadfastness in the face of fear. Temperance, or self-control, is the ability to practice restraint and moderation, especially when tempted by excess. The Stoics believed that freedom comes from mastering one's desires rather than being controlled by them. Think of Mahatma Gandhi, who practiced temperance through his commitment to non-violence and simplicity. He believed that true strength lay in restraint, whether in responding to violence with peace or in living a simple life, devoid of excess. Gandhi fasted as a form of protest and self-discipline, showing that by controlling his own needs, he could inspire and lead others. His story illustrates how temperance isn't about deprivation, but about using self-control as a means to achieve greater purpose and clarity. To embody these virtues in your life, start by reflecting on each one daily. Ask yourself, how can I seek wisdom in my decisions today? In what ways can I act justly toward others, even when it's challenging? Where can I show courage, especially when I feel afraid? How can I practice temperance and maintain balance, avoiding excess? These 4 virtues provide a blueprint for living with purpose, strength, and clarity. By integrating them into your daily life, you build a foundation that guides you through every challenge, helping you grow into the best version of yourself. We've explored 14 powerful Stoic principles that have stood the test of time, guiding countless people through the most challenging moments of their lives. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're tools you can use to reshape your perspective, turn obstacles into opportunities, and find peace even in the most chaotic times. Remember, it's not about avoiding discomfort or controlling every aspect of your life. It's about embracing life as it is, full of change, uncertainty, and fleeting moments. By owning your actions, practicing deep gratitude, and finding strength in what you fear, you begin to live with a purpose that extends beyond yourself. The real power of Stoicism lies not in avoiding life's hardships, but in confronting them head-on and finding meaning in every moment. So, as you step away from this video, I challenge you to choose one principle that resonated with you the most. Make it a part of your daily routine. Reflect on it, live it, and let it shape the way you approach life's challenges. Transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's built through small, consistent actions taken day after day. As Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Let your actions speak louder than any words. You already have everything you need to face life's challenges within you. These Stoic secrets are simply reminders of the strength you possess. So, step into the world with a new perspective. See obstacles as opportunities. Find gratitude in adversity, and live each day with courage and purpose. Your Stoic journey starts now. Make it count.